Chapter 196. Love and Resentment. After all, a man's heart is separated from his own, and his parents and children are torn to death for property. Moreover, she had only known him for a month or two. She did not think that he would say that because he loved her. Jian-yun stood outside the ward and took a few deep breaths. She dialed Ouyang Beicheng's number again, but the moment the phone rang, it was hung up. Jian-yun did not know whether Ouyang Beicheng and Bai Yanran had improved or not last night. At this time, it was not convenient to call anymore. She could only put away her phone and push the door to enter the ward. Ouyang Fei had already washed up under the care of the nurse. She had recovered quite well recently. Although her hair was shaved and her hair was wrapped in gauze, she could no longer rely on the ventilator. Dr. Alsum returned to the country a few days ago. Before he returned to the country, he gave Ouyang Fei a comprehensive examination and confirmed that the surgery was very successful and there were no sequelae complications. Only then did he, "Yun Duo is here." When Ouyang Fei saw Jian-yun, a smile appeared on her face. "Mom." Jen sat down and chatted with Ouyang Fei for a while. When she saw the nurse go out, she thought about how to speak to Ouyang Fei. "What?" Ouyang Fei keenly sensed that Jian-yun had something on her mind. She shook Jian-yun's hand and softly asked, "Is something the matter?" "Mom, what exactly happened between you and Dad? Why did he say?" Jian-yun thought about it and still told her about the matter of Jian Dongming calling her yesterday. She just casually did not mention that Jian Dongming wanted her to withdraw the charges against Lin Rong. He said what? Ouyang Fei's eyes darkened, and she asked, "Father said that you know what you have done, and that you are thinking about our relationship." Jian-yun bit her lips and did not continue, because she felt a little strange when she heard that sentence yesterday. When Ouyang Fei heard this, she became silent. After a long time, she softly sighed. "Yun Duo, don't interfere in the matter between me and your father." "But mother." Jian-yun gritted her teeth and still asked the biggest question in her heart. "Mother, is it that I am not father's daughter?" Ouyang Fei was stunned. It seemed that she did not expect Jian-yun to ask such a question, but she immediately reprimanded. "What nonsense are you talking about? Who told you?" "I heard Dad's tone was wrong. I guessed it myself." Jian-yun carefully looked into Ouyang Fei's eyes, wanting to see some clues from her eyes. But Ouyang Fei's reaction was normal. She saw that she said very angrily, "You are not allowed to say this kind of thing in the future." "Mom, can you tell me the truth? What happened between you and Dad?" Jian-yun was even more confused. She felt that the change in Dad's attitude towards Mom was the key. Ouyang Fei was silent for a while before she suddenly sighed and said, "Yun Duo, your father cheated on me and Lin Rong for more than 20 years. I was like a fool, so when I found out, my reaction was a bit bigger." At that time, Lin Rong was pregnant. She was old and pregnant. It was said that she was pregnant with a male child. "Your father always wanted a son. My health was not good and I could not have another child, so he knew that Lin Rong was especially happy when she was pregnant. But how could I endure this? I found someone to bump into Lin Rong and made her give birth. So your father hated me for making him have no offspring." Jian-yun was shocked. She did not think that the truth would be like this, but why does it sound like something's missing? Ouyang Fei intermittently said this large part of a sentence. She was already so tired that her face was pale. She could not speak anymore. Her eyes were closed and her chest was heaving up and down. She kept panting. "Mom, are you okay?" Jian-yun asked nervously. "I'm fine." Ouyang Fei shook her head and opened her eyes. She said, "Yun Duo, don't look for a lawyer for that divorce agreement. Just sign it. I don't want anything to do with Jian Dongming anymore. I don't want money anymore." When she said this, Ouyang Fei suddenly laughed. "Actually, I know that he doesn't have much money. These few years, the economy has not been good and his mind is not on the company. Lin Rong's family is like vampires. Forget it. Just take it that I made him lose his son as compensation. I just want to get rid of him as soon as possible." "Mom, don't you still have something to hide from me?" Jian-yun felt that Ouyang Fei's words were suspicious. She knew that although her mother was strong, she was not a reckless and cruel person. How could she find someone to deliberately bump into Lin Rong? Moreover, when she wanted her to get the divorce agreement yesterday, she clearly said that she wanted to take back what belonged to them. Why did she change her mind when she got the agreement? What exactly happened in the middle of this? "Yun Duo, don't ask." Ouyang Fei suddenly felt a little irritated. She waved her hand and hit Jian-yun's arm. Although Jian-yun did not feel pain, she was shocked. Because Ouyang Fei had a needle in her hand, do not hit the wrong place. It would not be good to bleed. Jian-yun quickly checked and found that there was nothing to worry about. "Yun Duo, go back. I want to sleep for a while." Ouyang Fei waved her hand and wanted to chase Jian-yun away. Jian-yun had a belly full of confusion, but she could not continue questioning Ouyang Fei. Seeing her chase away at this time, she knew that she must have asked some vital point to make her mother unhappy. The time was 9 o'clock, and Jian-yun and Ruan Mian arranged to meet at 10 o'clock. The location was a distance away from the hospital. If Jian-yun did not want to be late, she had to leave now. "Mom, I have something to do and go out for a while. I will come to see you in the morning." Jian Yun told Ouyang Fei and saw her nod before she turned around and left. When she went out, Jian Yun saw Baizhe coming out of the doctor's office with a few doctors. She wanted to go up and greet him, but Baizhe did not seem to see her. He walked past her and did not even look at her. Jian Yun curled her lips. She could not chase after him and could only walk towards the stairs. When she went down the stairs, she took out her phone and called Bai Yanran, but Bai Yanran's phone was not answered. Jian Yun could not help but wonder what the two of them were doing. At 9:50, Jian Yun arrived at the meeting place with Ruan Mian. Ruan Mian had long been waiting in the tea room. When she saw Jian Yun, she warmly welcomed her. Jian Yun saw Ruan Mian's eyes focused on her wrist, and her eyes were very hot, as if she saw some great treasure. She could not help but look down, and only then did she realize that she was looking at the watch she was wearing. Jian Yun was in a hurry to go out in the morning and accidentally dropped her phone into the water when washing her face. When she fished it up, it was no longer bright. She was used to controlling the time, so she wore the watch Huo Liancheng gave her. Later on the bus, she opened her phone and wiped it with a tissue for a long time before her phone returned to normal. She was in a hurry to rush to the subway and forgot about the watch in her hand. The Ruan Mian welcomed Jian Yun into the tea room and gave way to the seat. She then moved her eyes away from Jian Yun's wrist and said with a face full of envy, "This watch is Patek Philippe's mechanical watch, right? I have never seen this type of watch before. Is it custom?" Chapter 197. The God of Men has been captured by you. Miss Ruan, what is it that we have to talk about? Jian Yun just smiled. She did not answer Ruan Mian's question because she did not know the answer at all. If her phone had not fallen into the water today, she would not have put on her watch. Call me Ruan Mian. I am not an outsider. I will just call you by your name, Jian Yun. Ruan Mian lifted her eyelids and smiled at Jian Yun. She had to admit that the woman in front of her was very beautiful. Although she was not devastatingly beautiful, she had a quiet temperament like an orchid in a deep valley. People felt good when they saw her at first glance. She had a very special kind of beauty. Even a pure face could be so beautiful. No wonder the legendary Huo Liancheng, who did not like women at all, liked her. Ruan Mian had some doubts when she first received Gu Shanfeng's instructions to invite Jian Yun back to the Mings, no matter what price she had to pay. She suspected that Gu Shanfeng had made a mistake. Huo Liancheng was a world-renowned diamond bachelor. Many women coveted him. How could such a man like him fall in love with an ordinary woman? However, Ruan Mian was sitting opposite Jian Yun. She had guessed that the woman in front of her must have been hiding herself. Otherwise, a beauty like her would not have stayed in the Mings for 3 years. She was afraid that it would only take a month, or even shorter, or a week. A group of men who were as fierce as wolves and tigers would extend their tours. How could she wait for Huo Liancheng's favor? Moreover, the watch on her wrist was obviously very valuable. It must have been given to her by Huo Liancheng. Ruan Mian could not help but feel a little jealous in her heart. She clearly had fair skin and beautiful long legs, so why could she not touch a top-quality man like Huo Liancheng? She had no choice but to be hypocritical with a vulgar old man like Gu Shangfeng. Miss Ruan? Jian Yun saw that Ruan Mian did not speak for a long time and only stared at her. Her eyes were sometimes gloomy and sometimes envious. She could not help but frown. Oh, I'm sorry. Ruan Mian finally came back to her senses. An awkward expression appeared on her delicate face. She coughed twice and took a sip of tea before saying that in the future. Jian Yun knew that Ruan Mian wanted to persuade her to return to the Mings to work, but she did not expect Gu Shangfeng to spend so much money. He actually offered to give her 3 times her salary. As long as she was willing to come back, she could choose any department she wanted. Miss Ruan, Jian Yun still wanted to refuse. Firstly, she genuinely wanted to change her working environment. Secondly, if she returned to the Mings, she would have to meet Huo Liancheng often. She could not wait to stay away from him. How could she go back? Jian Yun, don't be in a hurry to reject. Think about it. Ruan Mian held Jian Yun's hand and said sincerely, you can mention the salary and conditions as long as you can come back to work. Miss Ruan, I am just a small figure. Why do you want me to go back to work? Jian Yun was speechless. She sighed and said, if President Gu is in Huo Liancheng's way, you don't have to. Jian Yun paused and continued, he will not mind. Actually, it is not entirely because of President Huo. Ruan Mian smiled and opened her mouth. President Gu also knows that you are good at working in the Mings, so he does not want to let go of your talent. Jian Yun could not help but roll her eyes. How could she be good at work? In the past few years, in order to save money for her mother, she had been working overtime, but she was afraid that people would think of her, so she did not dare to show any outstanding qualities. She was just a minor character in Mings. Jian Yun, I saw your salary. Your current salary is 76,000 a month. As long as you are willing to come back, the Mings will give you 5 times your salary. Ruan Mian saw that Jian Yun was still unmoved. She was also anxious and directly stretched out 5 fingers. If Jian Yun was not invited back today, Gu Shangfeng said that he would deduct her salary. 5 times the salary. That was close to 40,000 yuan a month. Stars appeared in Jian Yun's eyes. She was a little shaken. Jian Yun, Think about it. Give me an answer after you think about it. Ronmian was very good at observing people's expressions. When she saw Jianyun hesitate, she knew there was hope, so she quickly put it away. Then, okay. Jianyun was not familiar with Ronmian, and there was nothing to talk about. She looked at her watch and said, I still have something to do, then I will leave first. Yes, I also have to leave. Let's go together. The waiter will pay the bill. Ronmian drank the tea in her teacup and called the waiter over. Ronmian already said so. Jianyun did not want to leave on her own, so she sat there and took a sip of tea, waiting for Ronmian to pay the bill. When the waiter saw Ronmian hand over the bank card, he shook his head apologetically. I'm sorry, today's POS machine is broken. It can't be swiped. Ronmian frowned and took out her phone again. What about Ji Fubao's WeChat? The waiter said helplessly. Our shop hasn't opened these services yet. We can only accept cash today. Ronmian looked down at her wallet. Who knew that after searching for a long time, she found that there was not enough cash? She was immediately embarrassed. Jianyun, did you bring money? Can you lend me some first? I will transfer Alipay back to you. Let me treat you today? Jianyun saw Ronmian's embarrassed face turn red. She did not make Ronmian embarrassed. She directly took out her wallet and took out 2 100 yuan notes and handed them to the waiter. At this moment, Ronmian inadvertently glanced at the card in Jianyun's wallet under the transparent skin. Her eyelids immediately jumped up. It was actually a diamond VIP card from the XX Bank. This kind of bank card was only given to super big customers with shocking amounts of savings. Jianyun actually had such a card. Ronmian did not need to guess to know that it was definitely Huo Liancheng who gave it to Jianyun. Then Jianyun had such a wealthy boyfriend. Could she still take a fancy to that 5 times salary? Ronmian suddenly felt very melancholic. After settling the bill, Jianyun planned to return home. She had run a long way in the morning and was covered in sweat. She wanted to go back and take a bath. Ronmian insisted on sending Jianyun off, but Jianyun could not pull her away. Thinking about it, Ronmian already knew her relationship with Huo Liancheng and did not need to hide anything anymore. So Jianyun also generously got into Ronmian's car. When Jianyun said the address, although Ron was already prepared, her hands still trembled in fear. They actually really lived together. Jianyun, did President Huo not arrange a car for you? Ronmian asked curiously. His car is a business car other than a supercar. I can't drive it. Jianyun saw that Ronmian had been curiously asking about Huo Liancheng all the way and could not help but regret getting into her car. She thought for a while and still said, Miss Ron, can I ask you to keep today's matter a secret? My relationship with him, I don't want others to know. Good. Ronmian nodded. Don't worry, even if you don't mention it, I won't tell anyone. Ronmian thought that she still wanted to continue living in Ming's. If Huo Liancheng did not make it public, there must be a reason for him. If she offended him because of this reason, it would not be worth it. But Jianyun, I am really jealous of you. Ronmian's face was full of envy, jealousy and hatred. President Huo, Prince Charming, you actually got it just like that. Chapter 198, Sick Male God. Jianyun just smiled and didn't say anything. These people only saw Huo Liancheng's good skin, but they did not know how scary he was. If Jianyun had a choice, she would rather find an honest, ordinary person like Luo Yanyan than be together with Uncle Huo, who was always eccentric and temperamental. Ronmian wanted to befriend Jianyun. She saw that Jianyun did not seem to want to talk about Huo Liancheng and only said that she wanted to keep a low profile, so she tactfully did not continue to inquire about the matter between Jianyun and Huo Liancheng. Not long after, the car stopped outside Tongsen's Grade 1 residential area. Jianyun did not want her privacy to be exposed too much, so she let Ronmian stop the car at the entrance. After thanking her, she walked back unsteadily. When Jianyun arrived home, it was already past 11 o'clock. She ate late in the morning and did not feel hungry. However, when she came out of the hospital, she passed by the market and bought some vegetables. She brought the vegetables back from the bag she carried with her. The house was quiet. There was no sound. The furniture was spotless. Even the sofa that Jianyun messed up in the morning had been cleaned. It was probably because the auntie had come. Jianyun knew that there would be people coming to clean the house at around 10 in the morning, and she would cook when she needed to. Jianyun went back to the house to get a change of clothes and went to the washroom to take a shower. She felt a little embarrassed to enter the washroom. If she was not careful, she would recall the scene she saw yesterday morning. She could not help but blush, and her heart would beat faster. Jianyun did not dare to think too much. She simply rushed and put on her clothes. She took the clothes to the laundry room and threw them into the washing machine. Jianyun went to the kitchen and prepared to drink water. She also made some food. Although she was not hungry, if she did not eat at noon, it would be very uncomfortable in the afternoon. Going from the laundry room to the kitchen and passing by Huo Liancheng's bedroom, Jianyun found that the door to his bedroom was open. She was curious and looked inside. Suddenly, she saw someone on the bed. Jianyun was shocked and subconsciously took a step back. She felt that she should not pry into Huo Liancheng's privacy. If he was not alone in the bed, it would be too awkward for her to stand here. Thinking about this, Jian Yun closed the door. She felt that it was better to be careful. Otherwise, if Huo Liancheng was doing shameful exercises and was suddenly interrupted, he would definitely go mad at her again. However, the moment she closed the door, Jian Yun felt a little stifled and a little uncomfortable. She stood at the door and hesitated for a long time but still could not go against her inner thoughts. She pushed open the door and walked in. After Jian Yun went in, she subconsciously looked at the ground first. There was only a pair of shoes, and there was clearly only one person on the bed. However, the person on the bed was currently lying there. The iron-gray blanket was only placed on his waist. His upper body was bare, and his broad shoulders were exposed. His strong arms hung on the side of the bed, and half of his face was buried in the pillow. From Jian Yun's angle, she could see that his eyes were closed, and he seemed tired. Jian Yun could not help but sigh in relief, but she immediately felt that this scene was too healing. Damn it, if she continued looking, she would almost have puff. No, she had to quickly leave this place. Nosebleed. Jian Yun hurriedly turned around to leave, but Huo Liancheng turned around at this moment. He seemed to have muttered something and his voice sounded a little uncomfortable. Should she go and see him? Jian Yun was conflicted again. Jian Yun felt that her brain must have been kicked by a donkey. She clearly told her to stay away from Huo Liancheng, but why did she suddenly run into his bedroom and care about him? After some thought struggle, Jian Yun finally walked over and comforted herself. After all, they lived together. If anything happened to him when he was sick, she would not be able to get rid of it. Jian Yun tried hard not to notice Huo Liancheng's good figure. She sat by the bed and turned her head to look at his face. It was a little red. She reached out to touch his forehead. It was so hot. You have a fever? Jian Yun was surprised. Why did Huo Liancheng suddenly have a fever? Jian Yun had just finished speaking when she realized something was wrong. She looked down and was shocked. Huo Liancheng had woken up at some point. He was looking at her with his eyes wide open. His eyes were like black jade, dark and deep, like two swirls that wanted to suck her in. I'm sorry. Jian Yun quickly stood up and took a few steps back. Her face revealed an awkward expression. She did not know where to put her hands and hurriedly explained. I saw that your door was not closed, so I came in to take a look. Jian Yun only realized that there was a problem with her words after she finished speaking. It was his home. Even if his door was not closed, there was no reason for her to casually enter and exit his bedroom. Jian Yun thought that Huo Liancheng would definitely use his poisonous tongue to humiliate her again. She felt that she had brought it upon herself and humiliated herself. Forget it. Anyway, she was used to it. There was no difference between humiliating once and twice. I'll go out first. Jian Yun saw that Huo Liancheng did not speak for a long time and did not know what he meant. She twisted her fingers and turned to leave. Give me a glass of water. Huo Liancheng closed his eyes again and continued to lie on the pillow, but his voice was a little hoarse. Jian Yun's footsteps paused for a moment before she continued to walk out. Not long after, she poured a cup of warm water in and handed it to Huo Liancheng. Here. Huo Liancheng propped up his upper body, took the cup of water, and raised his head to drink it. With this movement, the blanket on his waist slid down. Jian Yun's eyes unconsciously looked over. With this look, she saw that Huo Liancheng was actually only wearing a pair of shorts. Jian Yun immediately looked at her nose, and heart. She told herself that she must not peek, or else she would be needle-eyed. However, this room was filled with his smell. That strong masculine scent and powerful hormones were almost unbearable. You have a fever. Use a warm towel to wipe it. Jian Yun turned her head and awkwardly passed the towel in her hand over. Huo Liancheng glanced at her from the corner of his eye, but immediately laid down. No. Jian Yun's hand froze in midair. She took a deep breath and asked again, Do you have a thermometer in your house? No. Huo Liancheng was a little anxious. He laid there and kicked on the blanket. His long legs were shining there. Jian Yun was too embarrassed to look. She turned her head and picked up a corner of the blanket. She covered Huo Liancheng again. She felt that his perfect and compact upper body was too annoying. It's so hot. Huo Liancheng was very dissatisfied with Jian Yun covering him with the blanket. This time, he directly lifted the blanket. Jian Yun also knew that people with fever should not wear too many covers. The most important thing was to cool off the heat. She really did not have any reason to ask Huo Liancheng to wear clothes. She could only place the cold towel in her hand on his forehead and then reach out to touch his palm. His palm was cold. When Jian Yun was tutoring, she had seen her employer take care of children with fever. She also knew some common knowledge. Cold hands and feet were usually the precursor to a high fever. How about going to the hospital? Your fever is quite high. Jian Yun retracted her hand and still did not look at Huo Liancheng. She lowered her head and said, If I don't go, I won't die. Huo Liancheng closed his eyes and his big hand instantly tightened. Just now, Jian Yun's hand brushed his palm. It was soft and warm like a feather. It made his heart itch. Chapter 199. You'll care about me? Hey, how old are you? Why are you acting like a child? Jian Yun was speechless. If you're sick, you have to go to the hospital. Huo Liancheng opened his eyes when he heard her. He looked at Jian Yun sideways. Do you care about me? Jianyun bit her lip and decided to avoid this question. Even if you don't go to the hospital, you should take your medicine. Otherwise, what if the fever breaks? It's okay. You have endured more serious than this. It's just a fever. Huo Liancheng seemed disappointed. He closed his eyes again and looked tired. Jianyun did not know what to say when she saw that he did not want to go in. She took off the towel that was on Huo Liancheng's forehead and got up to walk out. Jianyun had just left when Huo Liancheng opened his eyes and looked at her back. This scene was very familiar. It had lingered in his dreams for 6 years, but she could not recognize him anymore. Huo Liancheng did not know why he suddenly had a fever. He had always been in good health and rarely got sick. He did not even catch a cold often, but for some reason he felt dizzy when he woke up this morning. Maybe he was too worried. After a while, Jianyun came in again. This time she carried a basin of water and put it on the bed. She twisted a towel and wanted to pass it to Huo Liancheng to let him wipe his face. But he closed his eyes and ignored her. Jianyun could only do it herself. She wiped his face, then his neck and upper body. However, Jianyun was too embarrassed to face Uncle Huo's body. She wiped his shoulder and could not do it anymore. She could only twist the towel and put it on his forehead. Huo Liancheng did not move at all. He knew that if he opened his eyes to look at Jianyun now, he would probably scare her away again, so he simply closed his eyes and enjoyed her service. Furthermore, she was rarely so sweet and obedient. He did not want to ruin the atmosphere at this moment. Jianyun went out twice in the middle and found the medicine box in Huo Liancheng's house. She did not know if it was his family doctor who put it here. The medicine in the medicine box was actually very complete. They were all common medicine in the family. Jianyun found the fever medicine and looked at the instructions. She went to pour water before returning to the room. Hey, your family has fever medicine. Quickly take it. Jianyun followed the dosage in the instruction book and poured out the fever medicine. She poked Huo Liancheng's arm with her finger and signaled him to take the medicine. My family? Huo Liancheng asked. Isn't it your house? Huo Liancheng opened his eyes slightly, his expression somewhat gloomy. Take your medicine. Jianyun did not want to argue with him about this. No matter what, from the bottom of her heart, she did not have a sense of belonging to this place. To her, this place was not even as much as she had feelings for the room she rented. However, she definitely did not dare to say this to Huo Liancheng, so she could only continue to avoid it. No. Huo Liancheng pushed Jianyun's hand away, his face very smelly. Jianyun was speechless again. Would people who were sick make trouble like children? Even someone as powerful as Huo Liancheng had a temper? All right, we'll eat later. Jianyun decided not to get along with Huo Liancheng. After all, he was sick, so she could bear with it. Jianyun had just found a thermometer in the medicine box. It was not a traditional mercury thermometer, but an ear thermometer. This kind of thermometer was more convenient. She took Huo Liancheng's body temperature, 39.8. Jianyun was shocked. His fever was so high, but he did not take medicine and went to the hospital. No, she had to let him take the medicine first. Jianyun could not care so much. She grabbed Huo Liancheng's big hand and helped him rub his palm. What are you doing? Huo Liancheng narrowed his eyes and looked at Jianyun. Your fever is too high. Your hands are so cold. The effect of the medicine is not good. You need to rub it and heat it up first before taking the medicine. Jianyun lowered her head and rubbed his palms with both hands. He often held her hands, but this was the first time Jianyun noticed that his hands were actually so much bigger than hers. His palms were very wide, his fingers were long and slender, and his joints were clear. It was a very beautiful hand. If those hands saw it, they would definitely go crazy for it. Jianyun's hand was placed on his palm, as if as long as he closed his palm, it would wrap around her entire hand. It was afternoon time. Sunlight poured in from outside the window and landed in a corner of the bed. Huo Liancheng closed his eyes, but he could clearly feel that soft and gentle hand touching his palm. His heart also became soft, like 6 years ago. Jianyun seriously rubbed one of Huo Liancheng's hands and warmed it, then picked up his other hand. Only when his hands were no longer cold did she raise her head and pick up the medicine that he knocked down on the bed and put it into his mouth. Quickly take the medicine. I hate taking medicine. Huo Liancheng opened his eyes and turned his head. He spat out the medicine with a face full of impatience. You have a fever? How can you stop if you don't take medicine? Jianyun was speechless. Was President Huo acting like a spoiled child? Help me rub it for a while more. Huo Liancheng reached his hand in front of Jianyun. He felt that touching her small hand was really comfortable. If she could always be so sweet and gentle, he would rather his fever never subside. Take your medicine first. Jianyun saw that Huo Liancheng's face was frighteningly hot and began to worry. The medicine was spat on the ground by him. She poured out 2 more pills from the medicine bottle and stuffed them into his mouth as she coaxed. Be good, take the medicine, and I will rub it for you. Huo Liancheng's eyelids twitched. Did she really think of him as a child? But it did not matter. As long as she was willing to stay by his side, he would not mind her calling him sweetheart now. Drink some water. Jianyun saw that Huo Liancheng didn't spit out any more medicine this time, so she quickly took a cup of water. She put a straw in just now, so Huo Liancheng didn't need to get up to drink water. This time, Huo Liancheng did not refuse and obediently swallowed the medicine. Drink more water, Jian Yun instructed. I'm hungry. Huo Liancheng looked at Jian Yun. What do you want to eat? Jian Yun saw that he had finished drinking the water. She put the cup on the bedside table and asked softly. Meat. You have a fever. If you want to eat lightly, I will cook porridge for you. A row of black lines appeared on Jian Yun's forehead. Uncle Huo really wanted to eat meat all the time. Don't eat porridge, Huo Liancheng insisted. Jian Yun ignored him and got up to leave. After a while, she came in again. This time she brought a large thermos cup full of warm water. She handed it to Huo Liancheng. Drink more water? Huo Liancheng did not take it. He sat up and seemed ready to get up. When Jian Yun saw that he was only wearing a pair of shorts, she immediately turned around. What are you doing? Urine. Huo Liancheng answered matter-of-factly. Jian Yun heard his footsteps leave and then turned around. She could not help but feel annoyed. She put the cup on the bedside table and turned around to leave. While cooking porridge on the stove, Jian Yun went over to check. When she turned around, she suddenly bumped into a person. She looked up and saw that Huo Liancheng had come out of nowhere. He was standing behind her with his head lowered. He was looking at her with a deep gaze. Jian Yun subconsciously looked down and immediately felt relieved. Luckily, he had put on a pair of casual pants. Although he was still wearing nothing on his upper body, he was still wearing nothing. But it was better than showing off in a pair of shorts. Chapter 200. It's better to keep a little distance. Why did you come out? Go back and lie down. Jian Yun stepped back, trying to avoid Huo Liancheng. Huo Liancheng did not say anything and directly hugged Jian Yun. Jian Yun was shocked and wanted to break free, but she heard Huo Liancheng whisper in her ear, "Let me hug you for a while." You go and hug the pillow." Jian Yun would not be soft-hearted to him. She was already afraid of being at a disadvantage. This guy was too fickle. When he was happy, he pampered you. When he was unhappy, it really made her feel like she would be strangled to death by him in the next second. Huo Liancheng did not let go of Jian Yun. He suddenly picked her up horizontally. "Let go, let me down." Jian Yun struggled with all her might. Huo Liancheng suddenly staggered and almost fell. Jian Yun was frightened and screamed. She subconsciously hugged his neck. Huo Liancheng curled his lips. He buried his face in Jian Yun's neck and smelled her fragrance. He whispered, "Don't be afraid of me. I won't hurt you." "I don't believe you." Jian Yun panicked and tried to push him away. "Then what do you want me to do for you to believe me?" Huo Liancheng was also very annoyed. As long as she wanted him, he was willing to give his heart to her. But she had never taken a liking to him. "Let go of me first." Jian Yun saw Huo Liancheng wobbling. She was afraid that he would fall if he could not stand properly and would drag her down when the time came, so she hugged him tightly and did not dare to let go. Not only did Huo Liancheng not let go of Jian Yun, he even carried her towards the sofa. He sat down and let Jian Yun sit on his legs. Jian Yun saw that it was not that dangerous anymore. She pushed him. Huo Liancheng's fever had not subsided. He did not have the strength to do so. Jian Yun pushed him down on the sofa all of a sudden. "What do you want to do to me?" Huo Liancheng lay there and looked at Jian Yun. His eyes were slightly red from the fever, and his entire body revealed a trace of fatigue and laziness. He was completely different from his usual calm appearance. "What are you doing?" "Even if you give yourself to me for free." Jian Yun was flustered and wanted to climb down from Huo Liancheng's legs, but his hand was still on her waist. She struggled a few times but could not free herself. Instead, she was hooked by him and laid on his body. This posture became even more ambiguous. "Why are your words always so hurtful?" Huo Liancheng sighed. If he did not have a strong heart, he would have been driven away by her anger. However, he thought about it. She was so stubborn. It would be good for her to be rude. That would make Shu Haiyan not dare to look for her again. "Where did I hurt you?" Jian Yun felt angry. She put her hands on Huo Liancheng's chest and said angrily, "You are the one who spoke badly. Didn't you say I was dirty?" "I apologize to you." Huo Liancheng did not know Jian Yun would hold a grudge like this. When he scolded her, he was angry and did not know what to say. Who would have thought that he would be hated by her until now? "You don't need to apologize. What you said is the truth. I am dirty to begin with. So it's better if you don't touch me, or else your hands will be dirty." Up until now, Jian Yun could not ignore this word. She was too proud. Her pride did not allow her to accept people who humiliated her. "You are not dirty at all." Huo Liancheng started to feel dizzy again, but he did not show it. He smiled. "Aren't you still a virgin? How can you be dirty?" "Shut up." She punched Huo Liancheng in the abdomen. Huo Liancheng was already in pain. This palm made him frown. The corner of his mouth revealed a bitter smile. "Girl, is this how you take care of the patient?" Jian Yun saw that Huo Liancheng's forehead was covered in sweat and his handsome face was in pain. She immediately felt guilty. Furthermore, she also remembered that she clearly wanted to swallow her anger. No matter what he said or did, she could not argue with him. Why could she not help it? "I'm sorry?" Jian Yun hurriedly apologized. She even used her hand to rub the place where she had hit Huo Liancheng. It was better not to provoke him. Otherwise he would throw a cold glance at her when he got angry. She was not a person without a temper. She might really not be able to endure it and pack up her bags and leave, but that way she would be breaking the contract. If she broke the contract, she would have to pay a sky-high price. How could she have the money to compensate? What a damn contract. It took her life. Huo Liancheng grabbed Jian Yun's hand. He laid there and looked up at her. He could clearly feel that she had suddenly become careful. What was the reason for her to be so afraid of him? In front of me, you don't need to lower yourself, Huo Liancheng said. Isn't it better to be natural like before? I don't dare. Jian Yun pulled her hand out. Seeing that Huo Liancheng did not bind her anymore, she quickly slid off his legs and stroked his hair that fell on his face. She smiled awkwardly. I thought about it. Although we received our certificates, we did not receive them. But after all, they're not really husband and wife, so we should not have that kind of intimate contact. It is better to keep some distance. Then what do you think is the relationship between us now? When Huo Liancheng heard this, he felt very upset. He had been working hard for so long, but why did he return to where he started after the fight last night? She had come back this time? When he kissed her, she was willing to respond to him. It meant that she had feelings for him. Then, what exactly was the problem? Jian Yun heard this and tilted her head to think. She said, hiring relationship, you are the employer and I work for you. Huo Liancheng nodded and continued. Well, since you think I am the employer, then shouldn't you listen to me? What do you want to say? Jian Yun stared at Huo Liancheng warily. Huo Liancheng raised his sword-like brows and spread his arms. He said valiantly, now as your employer, I order you to kiss me. Jian Yun rolled her eyes when she heard him. Is your brain damaged? You are the one who said I am the employer. Huo Liancheng still had his hands open and said very seriously, I'm going to see if the porridge is ready. Jian Yun really could not be bothered to bother with Uncle Huo, who had made a mistake in his brain. She turned around and ran away. Huo Liancheng was lying on the sofa with his hands hanging down powerlessly. His eyes were closed, but the corner of his lips curled up into a smile. 10 minutes later, Jian Yun came out of the kitchen with a bowl of porridge. She saw that the living room was quiet. There was no sound at all. She could not help being surprised. She walked a few steps to the front of the sofa and saw Huo Liancheng lying there in his previous position. His eyes were closed, as if he had fallen asleep. Jian Yun placed the bowl of porridge on the coffee table in front of her. Just as she was about to get a towel, she saw Huo Liancheng's forehead and face covered in sweat. His exposed upper body was also covered in dense sweat. He was sweating. Jian Yun raised her eyebrows. It seemed that the fever medicine had taken effect. Jian Yun did not wake Huo Liancheng up. She took a basin of warm water, twisted the towel, and wiped his body. When she wiped his face, he suddenly grabbed Jian Yun's hand. His long and dense eyelashes fluttered. His eyelids immediately opened, revealing his dark, jade-like eyes. He looked at Jian Yun. For a moment, his eyes did not focus, but Jian Yun clearly saw his reflection in his eyes. In his eyes, there was only her.